Welcome to Tula News. After intense pressure from within his own party, President Biden announced that he was ending his campaign and throwing his support behind Vice President Kamala Harris to run in his stead. Ms. Harris declared her intention to seek the nomination, stating, "Together, we will fight, and together, we will win." Vice President Kamala Harris rapidly emerged as the Democratic frontrunner to challenge Donald J. Trump, fundamentally reshaping the presidential race at an accelerated pace. The race has now transformed into a condensed 106-day sprint, more akin to the swift elections of Europe than the prolonged American campaigns. This tight timeline will amplify any missteps Ms. Harris might make, but also reduce the opportunities for error. In a contest where Mr. Trump was on a trajectory to win, Ms. Harris immediately becomes the ultimate wildcard. Mr. Biden swiftly endorsed Ms. Harris, who would be a groundbreaking nominee as the first woman, the first black woman, and the first person of South Asian descent ever to serve as president. As the Democratic Party unites behind her, with the most vocal dissenters being those who have not publicly endorsed her, here are 6 ways her candidacy holds both promise and peril. She inverts the age argument. During the Republican primaries, Nikki Haley warned that the first party to replace its elderly candidate, Mr. Trump, will turn 80 while in office if re-elected would win. Her argument, though made for herself, also applies to Ms. Harris. Unlike the 81-year-old Mr. Biden, Ms. Harris, at 59, is not old, and this fact alone neutralizes one of the most potent Trump attacks. Within minutes of Mr. Biden's withdrawal, Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans began questioning Mr. Trump's ability to govern into his 80s, attempting to reframe an age debate that has been damaging to Democrats. She can make the issue of age and fitness a liability for Trump. Aaron Wilson, Ms. Harris's deputy chief of staff, said on a call with the group Win with Black Women, polls have consistently shown that voters are not overly concerned with the 78-year-old Mr. Trump's age. But simply removing the issue from the table may be enough of a victory for Democrats. They were facing the strong headwinds of 3/4 of Americans thinking Mr. Biden was too old, a view shared widely even before his faltering debate performance. Ms. Harris is also expected to provide Democrats with a far more energetic campaigner. Her current role is not as demanding as Mr. Biden's, and she can crisscross the country at a pace much faster than Mr. Trump has undertaken. Ms. Harris has often excelled politically when she has assumed the role of prosecutor-in-chief. Whether on the debate stage when she first confronted Mr. Biden in June 2019 over busing, or as a senator on the Judiciary Committee where her intensive cross-examinations went viral. When she ran for president, one of her taglines among several used by her struggling campaign was that she was best positioned to prosecute the case against Mr. Trump. Now she will have the chance to do so in the same year in which an actual prosecutor in New York secured 30 for felony convictions against him, and Mr. Trump still faces more than one future criminal trial. People who have worked with Ms. Harris believe that this framework could allow her to leverage some of her strengths and expose some of Mr. Trump's weaknesses. Polls have indicated that a significant portion of voters believe Mr. Trump has committed crimes, yet were still planning to vote for him. Biden was Scranton Joe. Harris will be labeled a California liberal. If Mr. Biden was widely perceived as too elderly to lead, he had other advantages built up over 50 years in the public eye. Notably, he has long been seen as a more moderate Democrat who resisted the more extreme elements of his party. This helped him appeal to the political center. "Do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters?" he once angrily asked during the 2020 race. His image was such that at times Republicans chose to attack him by suggesting he was being directed by other forces. Ms. Harris does not have that advantage. Instead, Ms. Harris began her political career as the district attorney of one of the nation's most famously liberal cities, San Francisco, before winning statewide office in one of the nation's most famously liberal states, California. Mr. Trump, notably, was among her donors then. And while Ms. Harris did not establish a reputation in California as an outspoken progressive, her tagline as DA was about being smart on crime. When she ran for president in 2020, she frequently took positions to Mr. Biden's left, including embracing a Medicare for all system that he had avoided. As Mr. Biden's partner for the last 3.5 years, Ms. Harris faces the additional burden of supporting the agenda of a president who has become deeply unpopular. The Trump team has already indicated they plan to attack her on immigration in particular. The question is whether Ms. Harris can successfully campaign on some of the Biden-Harris administration's most popular achievements without the current unpopularity of the man who previously led the ticket. She gives Democrats a much-needed boost of momentum. Mr. Trump and his advisors were not looking to disrupt a race he was winning by nearly every measure. As Republicans gathered last week in Milwaukee, they were downright jubilant about the direction of 2024. viewing Mr. Trump as almost a candidate of destiny days after he had survived an assassination attempt. Now his team must adjust to run a very different race against a very different candidate. Ms. Harris has the potential to energize the Democratic base, especially some of the core constituencies who had felt alienated in ways Mr. Biden no longer seemed capable of. The president had struggled, relative to his 2020 performance, among black voters and younger voters in particular, groups that Ms. Harris's historic potential candidacy would seem poised to improve upon. In an early sign of the Democratic appetite for a change, donors contributed more than $60 million online on Sunday, the third biggest day in the history of Act Blue. It was also notable that Mr. Trump expressed doubt about future debates with Ms. Harris after he had so eagerly sought to share a stage with Mr. Biden, suggesting a venue change from ABC to Fox News. Her gender could mobilize Democrats and also Republicans. In the 2020 primary, Democratic voters grappled for months with the question of who would be the strongest candidate against Mr. Trump. They wondered, often publicly, about the idea of nominating a woman. Mr. Trump, after all, had just defied expectations and defeated Hillary Clinton in 2016. The party ultimately chose an older white man in Mr. Biden. For much of the Trump presidency and beyond, Democrats have benefited from a gender gap. Women voted for Democrats by a larger margin than men favored Republicans. But Mr. Trump has expanded his advantage so much among men lately that the gender gap has suddenly favored the GOP. Ms. Harris has a chance to reverse that and has already proven herself a far more compelling communicator than Mr. Biden on the issue that Democrats believe can win them the 2024 race. Mr. Biden rarely mentioned the word abortion. Ms. Harris visited an abortion clinic. Ms. Harris faces other unique challenges as a black candidate and a woman in a country and a political system where both groups are often held to different standards. And in Mr. Trump, she faces an opponent with a history of exploiting stereotypes for his own gain. She can be transcendent, but also tentative. One of the remarkable aspects of Ms. Harris's rapid ascent to the pinnacle of Democratic politics in just over a decade is how few
loyalists have been with her for the entire journey. If Mr. Biden surrounded himself with a small, sometimes insular, group of advisors, a recent Biden Inner Circle addition could have served him for a decade. Ms. Harris has relatively few similarly long-standing aides. Early on as vice president, her staff experienced significant turnover. She has few advisors dating back even to her days in the Senate, let alone her time as Attorney General of California. She parted ways with many senior members of the team from her 2020 presidential primary run, which was marred by infighting. Those who have worked both for and against her say she has few peers when she delivers a powerful speech, lands a sharp line on the debate stage, or during a committee hearing. But they also say she can become overly cautious, retreat to scripted comments, and make hesitant, self-inflicted mistakes. Now she is inheriting Mr. Biden's. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.